So our 3D printers have been going basically non-stop for the last week, just printing all sorts of different stuff for the Expanse build. And we're gonna see if we can't start to put something together today.
The Kraken series AIOs from NZXT come in many shapes and sizes to fit your CPU needs. The Kraken Elite series RGB coolers feature a 2.36-inch 640 by 640 customizable LCD screen, showing system info or custom images and GIFs for a custom look, F-series RGB fans, and a single breakout cable for simplified installation. If low-key is more your thing, the Kraken Elite series also comes in a black non-RGB edition while retaining the amazing pump screen. To see the full lineup of new Kraken Elite and non-Elite coolers from NZXT, follow the link in the description below.
So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, this is the Tiki PC that we had gotten from Falcon Northwest. Small form factor PC that has an RTX 4080, what was that, the gold and black one, I forget what it's called. Oh, the ProArt, which is like a small form factor. It's funny that normal sized graphics cards are now considered small form factor, but anyway, it fits in here. And I went, you know, I was gonna do the Star Wars themed PC, and I'll still finish that build someday, but I've really been into the Expanse lately, and I went, I wanna build myself the, you know, the JNN Jasonante. It's funny, people keep asking if I'm gonna be Mars, you know, the MCRN or the UNN. It's the JNN, I just said that. We're the 4th faction and all. The OPA, let's just face it, they're like from Muscovy. If you guys are from the Inland Empire, you know what that's all about. But anyway, I was just like, you know, I started with this panel here where I like kit bashed it, and I was like, I want battle damage. You guys know me in battle damage. I'm gonna actually be changing this. I'm gonna cut all this off. I don't know if I'm gonna do that today. I meant to be my big angle grinder, my big cutter from home that I could just feel like butter, but then I forgot it, and I don't wanna sit here for an hour with a Dremel because this steel is thicker than most steel panels. I'll be sitting here all day long. But anyway, we got some stuff we gotta do here. So we've been coming up with these panels, just basically, they almost look like the side of like a Star Destroyer or even like a Borg cube or something like that. But because we were doing all this printing on our PRUSA Mini, which is of the 3 printers that we have a Lulzbot TASBot workhorse, which is great for large things that don't need a lot of definition. So for instance, if we need to do brackets or something that just are industrial strength, it's a big printer with a big print bed that just doesn't give us much detail. So that doesn't work for this build. We have the Ender 5, which is modified, but it's just, we can't get anything to stick to that bed. I gotta change the bed on it or something to a glass bed or something, because it's just, whatever is on there right now, no matter how much you glue stick it or whatever, is terrible. And you know, I'm not gonna get into a discussion about the Ender right now, but PRUSA sent us their PRUSA Mini earlier this year, maybe end of last year, and it has been phenomenal at its print capabilities. So good, in fact, I've reached out to them and say, hey, can we come up with an idea of how we can maybe get a few more PRUSAs in here, maybe including an XL, that way we can just get rid of the other crap and just have PRUSA everywhere. That way we could get way more prints done faster than dealing with one small mini print bed that has to do all this stuff. Actually, it's a PRUSA Mark III S, not a Mini. Just wanted to correct that. It just feels like a Mini. Anyway, moving forward, I posted a picture of these on Twitter. A lot of people got triggered by the amount of polygons that are in there, and that's true. This was just a tiny model that, and then Nick took these boosters off of like a NASA model or whatever, like the space shuttle, and then built the 120mm plate and put greebles and stuff on it and scaled it up. The problem is it also scales up the triangles. And no matter how hard we tried, we could not get this to not be so polygonal, if that makes sense. So Nick basically went and started remodeling them from scratch. Now, we've had several prints on these so far. Here's some more over here, where we've kind of come up with something now that I'm okay with. They're a little rough still, where some of the support material started to spaghetti a little bit. But you know what? We have spent so much time and filament now on printing these that we just have to move forward. But these are going to be what look like boosters, even though they're intakes technically, they're gonna look like booster rockets on the side. And that's where the intake fans are gonna be blowing directly on our graphics card. Now, one of the things I'm a little concerned about with using this PLA, I don't know if it's PLA or PLA Plus, and not ABS, is its sensitivity to warmth. Because I did this test panel here, This was actually, and you'll notice it's all kinds of warped. This is just PLA that was on our ender. You can see that it's terrible. I was just testing, heating up like a screwdriver and kind of puncturing it to make it look like damage to kind of see what kind of effects we get. And I left it out in the sun and it just turned to like a wet noodle. And I was like, oh boy. Now granted, it was like a 100-degree day outside and the sun temperature was probably, it was on blacktop. So this was probably 140, 150 degrees. I just have to hope that we don't get too much warmth. Otherwise, some of the parts might start to look terrible. But that's besides the point. Enough discussion. I want to kind of get some stuff going here and show you what we've come up with. So what I want to do today is I need to get our fans sort of mounted on here, which means these upper panels, and you'll see I've kind of indexed these by making some marks on them. See, I've got these lines under here that I can use to line them up because the orientation of these matter. They're not perfect squares. They're a couple millimeters longer on one side. That's because it has to sort of, on the other side, come up and match the top panel, because you'll see see how that panel doesn't come all the way up. So these do matter where they go. But these are what's gonna go here. And Nick is currently working on modeling up the top piece and the front piece. So, and I just messed up the indexing on that. It's off slightly now. It's like sticking up 1 millimeter farther on one side. I need to cut holes in these as well so that I can get the 120 millimeter fans on here. And I'm only taping these together right now because I don't have a way to stick them to the case yet. I haven't gotten that far ahead. First, I've got to get everything sort of mounted up and figured out where it needs to go. But obviously I've got to make some holes in these. We'll have the fans on there and then we will have these on the fans. Now this right here, we had to come up with a way for the power supply, which goes right here, to still have access to mounting the power supply brackets down. Because the power supply mounts to a bracket, then that goes in and then you screw the bracket down and that's how you mount the power supply. So we came up with this because this is also the intake for the power supply, the fan right there. So we came out with this panel, which as you can see is raised off the surface, and it will just attach with these magnets.
Yeah, bitch! Magnets! Oh!
So anyway, the CA glue is not completely dry, so there's been a couple times I put it on there and picked it up and the magnet stayed. So let's hope it stays now. Anyway, check it out, there you go. So now that's magneted down, so that will be there, it's raised, it gives a little bit of volume, it gives me an area to maybe put some lighting under there too, so we can make that sort of glow like a red or something, which is kind of neat. And then when I need to take it off, if I ever need to service this, just slide it down. If I pull it up right now, I'm afraid it's gonna pull the magnets back out. Anyway, the magnets are strong enough to where I could pick up the chassis with it. Not this piece, but just the magnets. So I'm not worried about this piece only being magnetically attached. Anyway, these panels here that Nick came up with these by putting the greebles on there and stuff. Let's go ahead and start by at least trying to get our holes cut, indexed, fans on here, and then these on the fans, and then maybe a little bit of paint on there. So I'm just using gaff tape to sort of mount this down in place, that way it doesn't move. Once the fans are mounted on here too, this is also gonna help hold the panel down, but I'm still gonna have to either two-sided tape or CA glue or something this to the panel, which obviously has fingerprints and oil all over it. I'll have to clean the panel real good. If I at least do this, now I can mark where the holes go, and I can just put some dots on where the perimeter of the opening is. And I had talked about cutting this out, but I'm not going to, there's just no point. At least now I can get it figured out where I need to cut the holes on here. This is funny, this is technically like support material in there in a way that we decided to leave because it looks like wiring. So I can get in there with my brushes and like make that look like wiring or something, paint it red or whatever. So I have this spare piece of wood that I will be using just so I don't cut down onto my nice new wood. Stop being so worried about my wood. I'm planning on using the new Corsair link fans for this just because of the fact that they literally link together and have one wire coming off of it. And I'll be able to fit that controller inside this case. Because I want the RGB, otherwise I can't get the blue engine effect and all that sort of stuff. And then where the battle damage is, I plan on having sparks and spark lighting going on, and I can only do that with a controller, so I need it. You know, it's funny, some people might be like, Jay, why didn't you just print the holes in there? Well, because we didn't know which panels we were gonna use. However, at the very least, oh, you can see all the places it's not through. At the very least, what this provides us, if I decide not to use this panel and try again, is now panel markings on where they need to go. so we could just print this again with holes there, and then just drill the holes needed for the fan. Yeah, you can see all the areas it did not go through. So now I guess I'll just finish my cut on this side. You see why I was trying to cut on the other side, because all the melted plastic ends up on the other side. But I don't think I'm gonna have a choice now. Okay, this should help now. Oh my gosh, there's still corners attached. Yay! Space boobs. I'm an idiot. It's not the prettiest, and if I end up having to redo it, at least like I said, we have something to use as a template now. But let me go ahead and drill my holes. And I'm drilling them a little bigger than I need because I need to make sure that they all line up perfectly. So as you can see, these two holes missed right here. So I'm just going to, now that I've taped it down, there we go. So another cool bonus to these fans, not baked in an ad, not sponsored or anything, it's just this side lighting here is gonna give us also something interesting to look at around it. All right, and then these, I'll round these edges out so they match the fan. But, so now you can finally start to see what that's gonna look like on the side right there. It also really helps having gone through hours and hours and hours of separating screw types to be able to now more quickly find the screws I need rather than digging through totes of mixed up screws because I would just toss them in there. Corsair brings gaming to the next level with the Xeneon 45-inch flexible OLED Xeneon Flex display. With up to 240 Hz refresh rate, 0.03 millisecond graded gray response time, motion blur canceling, anti-reflective coating, burn-in protection, and customizable bend based on user's preference, the Xeneon Flex from Corsair allows gamers to truly tailor their display to their liking. Click the link below for more details. So you have to imagine that these are obviously going to be black, right? Like the thruster, or dark gray, like a real sooty black. Look at that. Starting to come together. And then the other panel that we have for down here, it's gonna go right there. So look at that. Now obviously one of the things I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to get the cable from the fan into the case somehow. But you can see the vent's a little off center right there on where it should be, but that's fine. I told Nick to center this hole, this vent, on the panel rather than try and line it up with the opening. There's no fan there. That was just designed to let some radiant heat from the backside of the socket work its way out of the case. That's the one area I'm a little concerned about warping if it gets really warm. But one of the things I'm also going to be doing with this particular chassis is externally mounting a 240. At least that's the idea for now. I've been toying with the idea of going back to just using the 120 Asetek that came with it because of the fact that I don't know how well the external 240 is going to look. But I also need that air to make its way into the chassis. With the side panel on here, I'm not going to be able to get that air that's outside, like an externally mounted rad, into the case, but the 120 fan will blow directly down. It blows directly onto the GPU. So what I'm debating doing is just a push-pull on the 120, which will help keep the temperature and stuff better. So I'm debating just doing a push-pull 120 and then having Nick make an external grill, sort of like an intake grill like this, for that 120 fan rather than have a 240 right here. Now I could potentially just cut a hole here. The problem is, if you remember, right here is the power supply and all the cables. So it'd just be blowing right into solid air. So if I decide to do the 240 on the outside, I'm gonna have to have stilts, and it's off of that. Or, no, that's not gonna work, because if it's flat on here, I have the same problem. I rewatched my video with the temperatures of the 7800 X3D with the Asetek 120, and it actually wasn't bad. I remember I was shocked at how well it actually did. But a 240 would obviously be better. So I'm just really torn now on how I want to do that.
Ooh, Jay's cutting corners.
Just like life. All right, so I've rounded off these edges, which just look better. Okay, a couple more things I want to do today. I gotta figure out where the damage went in. Because remember, we have it exploding. I guess it still could have been an explosion without damage going through. The initial idea was that it was a railgun type of thing. It's just, I have such a thin chassis here. I don't have a lot to work with. So I have a pretty cool technique for damage, and I think the only place I'll have any sort of holes going all the way through, like small holes, is gonna be here because it's raised, and it will allow me to get that nice like hole, like black effect behind the hole without having to drill holes, more holes into the chassis. And then it's easy to work on this, obviously, because it just comes off. So let me show you my technique. It's not anything special, but it's mine. It's pretty simple. Just heat up something like a screwdriver, and then be like, all right, so now we've just taken a little bit of damage right there. And while it's cooling off, I can sort of, the reason why I'm spinning it is if I don't, what you end up getting is perfect Phillips head screws in it. Now this is also a neat technique if you wanted to make something look like it has Phillips head screws. Now you have to imagine, when this is all painted the same kind of a battleship gray, and I've got black marks on it where it looks like maybe lasers or something. Because the thing I have to keep in mind is, impacts create heat, which will lead to scorches. It's not just like a dent. So that was where I was like actually taking a lot of time researching and looking at photos of like battleship damage from like, realistically the best photos you can find of battleship damage where battleships actually shot at each other and were hitting each other was the Battle of Jutland back in World War I. So you can find some really good examples of what real projectiles hitting something looked like. And all of them, even if they were non-HE rounds and they were just some sort of a ballistic projectile, create a neat kind of a shatter effect on the side and then just splinters everywhere. And it always turns black because it's creating heat as it impacts. So let's just kind of keep working on this. Now you gotta remember too, when I paint this, a lot of this is gonna get filled in with paint, which will sell the effect a little more. And then I'm gonna airbrush the main effect. So I've kind of got this area where it looks like little debris went right on one part of the ship right there. I feel like what really sells it is a lot of little impact marks. The less heat in the screwdriver, the slower it is to melt. But like I said, I think I want this part right here to have an actual like hole all the way through it. And that looked like some heat went right through that. The way that kind of bubbles up on itself, I love it. And I had these all going the same direction because everything would be going the exact same direction. Space stuff. There we go. I mean, it's a little bit more melty, which might indicate laser damage. And like I said, choose your own adventure. What happened to the Jason Nante? You know what probably happened to it? Jay. I'm now going to do a light coat of gray on all of it, light coat of black on this. I'm trying to decide if I want to, I think I'll have the whole thing be black, that way, even with the greebles and all, that way it sort of blends into the fans. Once I start airbrushing the damage, it's gonna look really good. And the cool thing is, I do wanna put lighting behind here too, so I could maybe have what looks like a fire flickering back here, just like I did on the Imperial build. So like I think I've showed this before already, maybe I haven't. This is just the Color Max paint and primer mix. Works pretty well. I never had a problem with it, so I'm gonna go with again. First coat is always super light, like really light. Just so that the primer can get a nice bond. There, that's it. That's it for the first coat. Now I need to do the black on the thrusters. Now the reason why I'm not spray painting these is I haven't decided how they're gonna be mounted yet, what damage is gonna be on them, if any, where I'm gonna pass through tubes, if any. So I haven't decided yet, but these panels are gonna have a lot of actual hand painting involved with like the oxygen tanks and the wires and stuff like that. So that's gonna be fun when it comes to like my model building stuff. Anyway, let's now get our black paint. This is Krylon Fusion, whereas that's Color Max. I've tried a lot of different paints. I've had good experience with some, bad experience with others. So I'm just using what it is that I know I've had good experiences with. Same thing, very light dusting to start. And that's it. Let that dry so we can give the next coats something to stick to. All right, so there we go. I've got the two fans attached. So you can see I've got them lit up right now. I've just got the controller hanging out. Again, not an ad for Link, but this is the whole controller. This will be a lot easier to fit in there with one wire, one power cable, and one USB cable than everything else. And I guess worst case scenario, if it didn't fit, I could just externally mount it somewhere and have it be a part of the build. But anyway, you can see now The black on here doesn't look great. It's kind of shiny, which I don't want, but the rest of it's gonna be done with my airbrush, which will really dull it. Same thing with the inside here. It's really way too shiny. But you can see I've got the kind of a engine blue sort of going on right there. And the nice thing about, I guess the nice thing about using IQ's come a long way. It still needs a lot of work in my opinion, but I can actually have these fans respond to GPU temp, which is important because these fans need to speed up with the GPU temperature because they're directly blowing air on the face of the GPU. And right now they're at their max speed, which is, I don't know, 2200 RPM, I think, somewhere around there. The amount of air that, I know you guys can't see the air, but the amount of air coming through here is pretty nuts. So I'm confident I don't have to cut these out in any way. But that is giving us now our true effect of seeing, you know, what the thruster part will look like. And yeah, obviously this would not be the proper place to put thrusters on a ship. Remember, it's just a design cue, okay? It's not a real spaceship. But there's our radiant heat grill, which I'm gonna have this obviously all sooted up and painted black. Same thing with all this here. I still have to paint and airbrush all our battle damage, do some panel liner to make the panel lines really kind of show. There's a lot of work to do here, but this is now the farthest we've gotten yet on seeing this concept come together, and I'm really happy with it. And I ended up having to mount the base back on right now, just otherwise so it didn't tip over, because this is a lot of weight up top, so it was kind of tippy. But I love the fact that I can just pop this off, right? So there's our magnets on there, as you can see. There's our battle damage, or whatever damage it is. So that way I can mount my PSU still. And then this is still just taped down. I have to still figure out how I'm gonna mount that, but I'm thinking, I don't want to do two-sided tape, but I am thinking maybe an adhesive spray. I don't know, I really don't know, but I'm really excited to kind of keep going with this build. So let's go over to Nick's computer so he can sort of show us like the vented top that he's coming up with, sort of a louvered top, so you guys can see how that's coming along. So this is the top panel right here. You see kind of a plain L shape in here. That's because we have the power buttons there and then the USBs on the side. There's a couple other buttons, I think USB-C, USB-B or A is on there. But what Nick has done, go and rotate the model, is he's created these louvers that really do look like kind of like a spaceship design, but these will allow air to still radiate out of, because remember, these actually are radiating heat out, and any of the positive pressure coming in with those fans now that I just showed you can blow air out the top as well. The graphics card also has air that blows out the top. So these are just louvers now that are going to be allowing that heat or that air to escape, which will tie our design all the way in around the top. But you can see on the front here, he added some of the like oxygen tanks and greebles and stuff right there. And then I'm going to, I guess, manually figure out how I'm gonna cut holes in this for the USB and stuff. So now looking at the top of the case, you can see how the louvers tie into the design that's already in the top of the Tiki and why that L shape was left out, because a power button, reset button, USB-C, headphone jack, and 2 USB 3s. So this right here, as I was saying, I can have this spray painted gray. This will just be showing, and then we'll have the L shape cut out there and then the vents sitting up here. So we'll have some more 3D design. Instead of being flat, I'll have like those louvers on the top, which will look really, really cool. The fun part here is gonna be the airbrushing to make the damage effects really stand out. Because right now, obviously, they look very 2D and boring because of the fact that it's all one color. But this is just the base color so that I can do all my airbrushing and stuff on top of that, which will probably be in the next couple parts of this video, simply because of the fact that I've got to get all the panels situated before I really start dealing with airbrushing. That way everything matches so I can blend all the colors in. That's the part I'm looking forward to most. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I wanted to just kind of give you an update on where we were with this build. I told you guys I was going to try and move quick on it. Most of what we've been waiting for right now, obviously, is trial and error regarding printing with the 3D printer. And this is why I started this video saying more PRUSAs would be awesome, because we could print more panels without waiting for one. We had to print one panel at a time, because unfortunately the print bed size on the Mk3S is not very big. It's not a whole lot bigger than the panel itself. So fantastic printer, just for us needs more build space. All right guys, thanks for watching. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.